Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to talk about how avoidants decide you're the one versus someone that's a little bit temporary. We've talked about this topic before on this channel, and I usually talk about it in the sense how to know which one you are, but I also think it's important how avoidants decide this. I think every person, every attachment style kind of has their own process, but I've noticed that avoidants have it in a more particular way. And it might be a little bit more specific because of their attachment style. Now, if there's anything specific about differences between a fearful avoidant and a dismissive avoidant, I will mention. And I'll also mention if I notice there's any gender specific. A lot of you guys are asking for more like particular stuff, male avoidance, fearful avoidance, female avoidance. If it's anything specific about that, I will bring it up. But I think a lot of people think they are much more different than they are. Some of them are, especially fearful and dismissive. There's quite a bit of differences. But with gender, it's not as different as a lot of you guys think it is. And I will say, if you think that it's very different to the point where you're thinking, oh, I have this female avoidant in my life and it doesn't fit any of these things that you're saying is an avoidant, maybe she's just not avoidant. She might be somebody who just likes a lot of these guys and you're just not one of them. She might be using you. I don't know what it is, but I really think it's important that I clarify that. If it's not fitting and you're telling yourself it's because of their gender, it could very well be that maybe they're just not avoidant. Because regardless, most avoidants have very similar categories. And if it's going to be specific about female or male, I'm probably going to tell you. But that's just something important to keep in mind. Okay, so how do avoidants decide? The very first one is how you handle conflict and past issues. This one is the most important one, but I feel like once you kind of get the handle of this, I think it can be one of the, I wouldn't say the easiest, but it is one of the most foundational ones for an avoidant. So if you have this one, you already kind of fit the category of being the person they're going to commit to and be together with, because this is the thing that one of their biggest needs. It's not necessarily that they don't like to talk about how you feel. And it's not that they're trying to ignore you. At least they would say that. You probably feel like that. But what actually it is avoidants really value peace. And when I mean peace, I don't mean that everything's brushed under the rug and no one's talking about it. That's not what it is. What avoidants actually feel is conflict makes them feel like they're wrong. And they feel like if you're next to them and you're accepting at least a little bit of them, that to them makes them feel peaceful inwardly. And that feeling that they feel, a lot of avoidants and people in general, they fall in love more deeply and they commit more deeply about how you make them feel about themselves and you. It is true how you make them feel about themselves. And so if you handle conflict and the past issues with a little bit more management, you don't bring them up all the time, you don't pick on it, or you're able to move past it every now and again, the avoidant actually feels accepted. And that is a feeling that makes them feel like, I want to feel more accepted in life. The reason they avoid people is a lot of times they don't feel accepted by people. If you ask an avoidant, a lot of times, especially a dismissive avoidant, but both fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant will say, well, the only person that's ever been there for me is myself. So what's really the point in being with another person? I don't see the benefit of it, right? However, if you make them feel a way that they can't necessarily feel by themselves, they can't fully feel accepted by themselves, because the part of the point of acceptance is how individuals from social psychology, right? How we feel in group settings or how we feel from another person. That's part of the foundation of acceptance. Self-acceptance is part of it. But another part of acceptance is, do I fit in this group? Do I fit in this category? Do I belong? Belonging is very strong in human psychology and social psychology just in general, right? And avoidants feel that way. And when you can give them that feeling of acceptance, they really can't get that from themselves. And so that's something that really gives them an incentive to commit, okay? The next one is how you handle their insecurities. This one is more common with fearful avoidance. In particular, fearful avoidance that lean anxious, but in general, fearful avoidance in general. How you handle their insecurities. Are you going to make fun of them? Are you going to bring it up? Are you going to repeat it multiple times? Are you going to, I don't know, twist it or manipulate it? Are you going to use it to your advantage? Those things can be really hurtful. And with fearful avoidance, a lot of fearful avoidants have very low self-esteem, right? And it's not, some of them are very open about it too. A lot of my patients who fit as a fearful avoidant, a lot of trauma fearful avoidants are very self-aware usually when it comes to the trauma they've had, just because it's so extensive, it's hard to ignore. Because a lot of them had like histories of homelessness, actual abuse, violence. Their parents maybe were criminals. Like they understand that they're probably not fitting in the criteria. So they are pretty aware and in tune with their insecurities, sometimes to the point where they almost feel comfortable with their own insecurities. But if you handle those insecurities in a way where it makes them feel shamed and shunned for it, both types of avoidance, but particularly with fearful avoidance, they feel like there's just absolutely no way they can have this relationship because their insecurities are part of who they are. And if you use that against them, they can't accept you as someone that can be close to them. And a lot of fearful avoidance, more particular with fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance, fearful avoidance can hold a grudge if you do something like this. Dismissive avoidance, I feel like they can be grudging in other ways, but fearful avoidance, if you embarrass them or hurt them in terms of certain insecurities, it's going to be really, really, really hard for them to get over because some of them actually will cycle through that embarrassment or that hurt continuously. Like they almost ruminate. And I'm going to give an example. Let's just say a fearful avoidant is very insecure about their job situation. Maybe they have a part-time job right now and they're hurt about that and they are relying on their parents financially, and that makes them feel really bad. And they just want a stable job. They're not even looking for something that great because some fearful avoidants are not even aiming for that high because they look down on themselves. And sometimes that's not even looking down. Sometimes they're just satisfied with what they have. But they definitely want to be able to pay all their bills without their parents' help, let's just say for this example. And maybe you keep telling them that they're not choosing the right jobs or they're not doing enough or they're lazy or whatever it is, or you feel like they can't do that job, and you start implying it more of their insecurity. Maybe they told you they feel like they're not very social, and you say, see, this is proof you're not very social. I told you have to start learning to be social. That's going to make them feel like they should have never told you that, right? And dismissive avoidance will feel that way too, but usually with dismissive avoidance, they'll tell you directly not to do that. Don't ever talk like that to me again. It's going to be very harsh, very blunt. With fearful avoidance, they might not say anything, but they're going to ruminate on that, and that is going to really destroy the relationship. The next one is how you handle secrets. A little bit more common with fearful avoidance for the exact reasons I just mentioned above, but in general, how you handle any of the secrets with either avoidant, how they explain maybe something happened to them. Let's say we have a female fearful avoidant, and she was assaulted in her previous relationship. And because of that, it's really hard for her to get comfortable with intimacy because of that fear, particularly, right? And maybe you hold it against her and you say, hey, I'm not that guy who hurt you. Stop thinking I'm that way. And then maybe you're like, I talked to my friends about this. All their girlfriends don't do that, or some of them have that experience and they've moved past it. I think you're holding on to it. And maybe that came across as very blunt, even though in actuality you're just saying, hey, I want you to trust me. But it comes across very hurtful because every person's trauma is different, and you basically just told something that she probably never wanted anybody to know. That's a very extreme example, okay? I know most people will not do that. It's an extreme example. But she gave you that secret that was a very vulnerable thing. And you kind of just you were just thinking about yourself is what she felt like. And so a better way to handle it is to not tell anybody and talk about it with her. And you can still say, hey, maybe it's something that we can talk about in couples therapy, or maybe we can process it together, but I never want to pressure you. I never want to hurt you. What's something I can do to help? Something along those lines. Being kind and gentle. I'm sorry that happened. I would never do that to you. Things of that sort, okay? The next one is how you take accountability and apologize. Dismissive avoidance, especially male dismissive avoidance, really, really respect and really need this one, okay? Any sort of accountability. Doesn't have to be that big. Saying something like, hey, you know what? I overreacted a little bit. That was on me. We can still talk about this, but I do realize where I pushed your buttons, kind of ruffled some feathers there, and I apologize. Some sort of accountability, any form of it is fine, because avoidance, they're not going to, especially dismissive avoidance, they don't need it like perfectly and specifically. They just want proof that you would take some accountability so that they sometimes can feel like they're not going to be the one who ends up apologizing all the time. It's a fear of theirs, even though they don't necessarily show that that's one of their fears. It is. The next one is, are you going to change, or are they the only ones that's going to change? Part of the fear we were just talking about. Avoidants do, if they love you, they do want to change. They genuinely do. They want to be more open to being more commitment forward. They want to make you happy. They don't want to lose you. And so they do plan on changing. But a lot of them really want to make sure you're going to change as well, so that they don't feel like they're the only person that's always changing. And this comes from their childhood wound. When they were younger, they were criticized a lot. And so that critical feeling of always never being good enough and having to change everything and shutting off their emotions, even though they live in that trauma response now, they still have the memories of having to change basically their natural operation, which is a person who has emotions and feelings and care about things and wants and desires. They had to shut all of that away. I'm not exaggerating. That is true. A lot of dismissive avoidants have, like, especially dismissive avoidants, their childhood is not going to be something that seems obviously traumatic. Usually it's just very strict upbringing, not allowed to have certain emotions. And so with fearful avoidance, as we talked about, it's a little bit more obvious, but both of them, they do want to change. They just want to know that you're going to change too, so that they're not the only person that has to carve out another part of them and adjust it for some reason, and they're the only one, because that was how it felt with their parents, okay? The next one is, how do you handle when they need space? Both types of avoidance will be more specific about this, but a lot of them need space in different ways. Fearful avoidance, sometimes when they need space, they don't necessarily need space where you're physically not there. Sometimes they just need you to be next to them while they're maybe just doing whatever they need to do. Some fearful avoidance, they don't even need to dive into hobbies. Sometimes they need to just lie down. Some fearful avoidance just literally need to lie down next to their partner and just hug them in the dark. I have fearful avoidance on my caseload that say they need that, or sometimes they need to just watch TV and, eat chips or whatever. And it's okay if their partner is next to them. Dismissive avoidants are a little bit different. Sometimes when they need space, they need to go and just redo their whole Christmas tree, or they need to go and fix their lawn. They need to work on their homework, whatever it is, and they need you. They don't need you physically there. You can be in the house, but just not like next to them or talking to them. Whereas fearful avoidance, sometimes their version of space might be you can still be there and talk about gentle things, just not too engaging. But ask your partner what their version of space is. But if you can handle it in the way that makes them feel safe, usually that means you're the one. The next one is, when they give you an uncertain answer, are you patient and you trust them? Do you push them? How do you respond? Because sometimes it's not necessarily, you're not going to have to accept their answer, not always the case, but are you able to communicate clearly and able to understand their side as well, not just trying to push them into what you want to see? And the last one is, how do you behave when you're apart, particularly like business trips, holidays, like an extended period? How do you behave? Are you texting them continuously? Are you picking fights? Are you instead wishing them, a good business trip, or I hope you get that proposal, whatever is going on, right? Are you being more positive, or are you being more negative? That's kind of the main thing. And so these are kind of the ways that avoidance can kind of decide if you're the one, right? Part of this can come from their fear of being taken advantage of, also losing their autonomy. And I've talked about those things on this channel, but I'm going to summarize and then we're going to wrap it up. How do you handle conflict and past issues? How do you handle their insecurities? How you handle their secrets? How you take accountability and apologize? Are you willing to change, or is it just them? How do you handle when they need space? How do you handle when they give an uncertain answer? And how do you behave when you guys are apart? I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.